I'm going to build a 3D data file of this bottle design in Shaper 3D. The intent of this build is to export two-dimensional layout drawings, orthographic drawings, to make a foam core model. So this is going to be a relatively simple piece of geometry, but it's a very typical type of approach for bottle design. I'm going to keep these two-dimensional ruled surfaces that are only curving in one axis to be able to fabricate this easily out of foam core. So what happens in real bottle design, these curved surfaces on the front and the back, we'll see this is very typical in a lot of bottle designs. When it's curving in one axis like this, we're allowed to label this entire surface. They call it a ruled surface. So we can put PSL labels, pressure sensitive labels and decals on the front and the back and get the whole bottle to be branded with graphics. Another feature of curving these front and back panels is to prevent an effect called paneling. So in a plastic bottle, it's a relatively flexible material. And if you put your liquid or your material inside, it can cause a flat panel on the front and back to belly out, to kind of curve out irregularly. So as a designer, we want to control that because it can be very unsightly. It doesn't look right, especially if there's material in there that might have gone bad. It looks like something's not right. So by curving this surface out, we can control that flexibility and we can make it easier to label and prevent this paneling effect. Now, paneling can also happen in the other direction where the panels can bend in and suck in. That depends on atmospheric pressure from whatever the material is on the inside and the outside. And again, it doesn't look very nice and it looks like there's something wrong. So that's another feature of curving these panels front and back. It's very typical. We're going to see a lot of that in bottle design. So I'm incorporating that in this particular one. The other part is our profile. Around the edge here, we can do unique profiles in many different configurations. So this will be a typical type of build that I want to show. It's a good starting point to take a look at some of these geometries. But again, I'm only going to export this to make a foam core model. So I'm not talking about renderings or any complex compound curves or anything like that. That'll come later when we start to develop some of these shapes. Okay, so this is what the solid file will look like. So let's move these two bodies. So in Shaper, it's all about these sketch planes. Let's just take a look at this front one first. Front view. So I'm just going to talk about developing this light blue area here is a contained surface, and all the geometries in Shaper 3D are derived from what they call sketches. So Shaper is not a surface modeler, it's only a 3D modeler, direct modeling. So it's a little bit of a different approach. And I'll do some comparisons with some other programs so we can see how that process works. So let's just move this over a little. So everything starts with a sketch. So over here, I'm going to go into my sketch mode. Just quickly, we do have all these snapping details here. So I like to keep them on. That's usually a preferred approach. I'm going to have this in inches because this relates to all the retail environments that I work in, gondolas and shelf clearances and all that. They're all in inches here. So I can estimate very quickly like what shelf this is going to go in and what the clearances are depending on the category. Like shampoo bottles, we normally have like a 12-inch clearance and they're usually the lower shelves. Sometimes in deodorant and these other smaller bottles, they have different clearances that might be around 7 or 8 inches. So it's all inches. So I like to just work in the inches so I can easily estimate what I'm doing. But whatever your preference is perfectly fine. So in sketch mode here, I'm going to go to the arc tool. And I'm just going to draw these arcs here and mirror that over. So we can take a look at how to create some of these sketch surfaces. Okay, so this is snapping to perpendicular. Think. Here we go. So I can now control what this arc is going to be after I do those 2 points. So I'm just going to roughly estimate that for now. I'm going to put that here. So I want to take that. I'm going to make this symmetrical left and right. So I just need to take that and mirror that over. So I'm going to go to my line tool and create a line. So I'm just going to estimate approximately where that might be. So I'm going a little bit beyond what I need, top to bottom. Right click, terminate that. So I want to take this line and I'm going to mirror it using this control line that I put here in the center to get that on the other side, and I'm going to turn that into a surface. So I need to exit sketching. I'm going to select this. So let's look at up here, this little square, this little widget. If you double click on that, that'll automatically put it into this nice three-quarter view. So let's see if I can get this into mirror mode. More. Down here, I have mirror. So I've selected that curve and I'm going to click on mirror, and it's guiding me to pick a guideline. So if I select this guideline, it'll automatically mirror that over to the side. So I'm going to say, okay, done. And I'm going to go back to the front view. I'm going to take away, I'm just going to select that center line. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to delete that. So now I have these two curved lines. I really can't do too much with these here in Shaper. I need to turn it into the surface. So if we go to our line tool and we connect the ends, turn this into a surface. This time I'm going to double click here and it should terminate that line. Okay, so now in Shaper, these lines are automatically connected. That's how it works. In some of the programs, you have to intentionally connect or disconnect what you have to do, but here, these are automatically connected. So if I come out of my sketch mode, it's this light pale blue color. So that means it's a full closed sketch or a 2D surface. And then you can start to work with those. So that's what I have over here on center. So that's how that was built. It's pretty straightforward. So let's just take a look at these other parts that I have down here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to extrude this, make it a thick, solid body, and then I'm going to trim it with some other sources. So let's go back to this one. I'm going to delete this because it's exactly what I have here. We don't need that anymore. This little rectangle is literally just the rectangle tool, and I built it on top, and it's half the width of my closure. And I'm going to revolve that. So I'm going to show some revolving, extruding, and then a Boolean operation and some radiusing. So this should be pretty straightforward. So now I have this. I'm going to select that. I want to extrude this. So automatically, this little arrow widget is coming up right away because it's a very typical function. So here in Shaper, they bring it right up front. So it's ready to go because in most cases, that's what will happen. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to extrude this forward. So I'm literally just pulling on that surface and it's coming forward. So I know I have built this bottle. So I know I want a total of 2 inches front to back. So I can just estimate, or I can click in here and I can put my 1 inch. So I'm going to do 1 inch front and then 1 inch to the back. So now I know I have that extruded part at 1 inch. So I'm just going to go to the other side and do the same thing here. It is now giving me the number for the total thickness of that. So I have this at 1 inch already. So I'm going to go for 2 inches for my total thickness. So I'm just going to select 2. So now I have this 2 inch geometric extrusion with my unique profile. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to trim the front and back, or actually a Boolean operation where I'm going to difference a solid from that. But they have a unique approach here, which is really interesting. Instead of creating these other solids, you get here, and there they are. I have these two surfaces down here. So let's just take this large body away for a second. And I'm going to take these sketches away. Oops, I'm going to keep those and remove that. So now I have these two shapes down here. These are built very similar to how I made the profile. It's just an arc and I closed it into a solid. So what we can do is I'm going to select these, shift and select. And here's this little arrow widget. So just like I extruded the bottle shape, the body, same thing happens here. I'm going to select that and I can extrude these up and I have these two shapes. But what I want to do is take these two shapes and difference these bodies from the main body. So instead of creating these and then doing a Boolean operation, we can do this all at once. So let's undo that. Let's bring back, no, that's my main body. Here we are. The closure, there we go. So now I can select these. So when I have this mass, this body in position here, and then I select these two, and I do extrude them up, with that other body in position, what it's going to do is it's automatically going to separate those from this main body. So I'm going to come all the way up, and now it has created that curve. So I'm just going to deselect and rotate that. So now I have created that curve on the front and the back. And that's my ruled surface for my bottle geometry. So let's let's get rid of those. Okay, so here's my shape. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to radius these corners. Now I'm just going to radius these four corners because we can accomplish that in the cardboard and the foam core. I'm not going to do any compound curves. So normally this side surface here would have an arc to it, so we could have our nice parting line and our draft angle to get out of the mold. But since I just want a 2D drawing to make a foam core model of this design, I'm going to keep that very clean at this point. I will show some other tutorials on how to incorporate draft angles and things like that with this type of design configuration, but we'll do that at a later time. So let's just rotate to the other side so I can see these. So I'm shifting and selecting just these edges here. Okay, so by doing that, I have this little arrow that comes in. So what Shaper has done, they've incorporated radiusing and beveling in the same tool. So if I take that little wedge and push it in, I am beveling the four corners. And if I go out from the shape, I'm creating a radius. I'm just going to estimate about how big that was. Just a slight bit bigger. So I'm going to use the revolve tool and revolve this. So by having this sketch plane, if I revolve this around, I can get a solid body out of that. So let's find this tool. And here it is, revolve. So now it's just asking me what I want to revolve it on. So I'm going to revolve it around this center line here. And it's automatically giving me 360. Now I could go in here and change these calibrations. I want this to be a complete cylinder, so I'm going to leave it at 360, but I could click in here and make it any kind of calibration that I want. So click yes, and we are good. So this is the bottle for this point. Now, like I had mentioned, if I did this as a real blow molded bottle, I would have some compound curves on the side. This whole front edge would be radiused, and that would be more of a realistic interpretation. But since I'm just doing this to make a foam core model, just to use mock-up techniques as part of my iterative process. So let's say I want to see how this feels, how big it is, how I like that curve. Instead of going all the way and making full 3D data and doing a 3D print and all that. So I can quickly just export this and make a cardboard model out of it, just to take a look at it. And I might use cardboard models to maybe see how they pack out on a shelf or how it might fit into a shipping cart. And there might be some other reasons that I could do quick little mock-ups to do that. So I will have a tutorial on how to make this mock-up out of cardboard. But this is just the 3D file to set up the guidelines and patterns to make that foam core model. So this is the full geometry. It's ready to go. I'm not detailing the closure yet either. We'll do that in a later tutorial. So the next step here is to export a drawing. So up here we have modeling. We have these other approaches. We have modeling, we have visualization, which is our rendering, and then we can do our drawings. And here, these are just the 2D kind of spec drawing. So I have this set up, but I'm going to just do a new one just so we can talk about how to do that. So let's do this plus here. So it says, okay, I'm going to create a drawing. Is what bodies? So I'm going to select this one. I'm shifting, and I'm going to select that one, both of these bodies to be turned into a drawing. So now I've done that. It says, okay, next. We're talking about page size here and scale. This is a relatively small bottle, so I'm going to get this to fit on 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to do it vertical. So this is very easy. I can just put it in, print it out in my copier, and I can get a nice layout drawing that I'm going to use to create templates with cardboard. So I'm going to go full scale. So we have 1:1, and I'm going to say continue. So here is the start of this drawing. It gives us these views. There's a whole series of other views that we can create also, but all I really need is the front, side, and top. And I don't even need this three-dimensional drawing. So I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to delete that. And I'm just going to move these around. As far as this page, I don't want any title blocks. All I want is the layout. So I'm just going to do empty sheet. And I'm going to move this around a little bit so I have some room. So double clicking on that, I have this little widget so I can move this up, get that into position. I'm going to, let's see, let's double click on this one, and I'm going to shift and double click on this. I'm going to move these up at the same time, get that away from the bottom of the page, like so. This is what I need at this point. I want to really understand this profile and these radiuses, and I want to have a feeling for this thickness here. So I'm going to create patterns that I'm going to use to cut the foam core. So once I have this in a position, then we can use this arrow here and export the drawing. We can do DWGs, DXF, and even PDF. These are good drawing files. Drawing meaning it's just like a line drawing. So when I open this in Illustrator, I'll have a vector line work. So since I have this already, I'm not going to export it again, but all you have to do is save, and then you will be able to bring that into Illustrator. So I'm going to cancel. That's really the process to get this drawing to work. So let's go back to drawings, modeling. So that's it. Building this simple geometry and then exporting that in a drawing to make the foam core model. I'm going to do a whole series of different bottle builds, and they're going to get more and more complex as we move along. So it's a good idea to go through each one of these. This one's relatively simple and straightforward, but as they get more complicated, I want to emphasize these good practices about how to organize some of these files.